Hello everyone. I hope that you are enjoying Econ 252 macroeconomics so far. Last week I recorded a short video and went over the syllabus. And in this week's video, I want to introduce one of the most important sources of macroeconomic data. I'm going to talk about FRED, Federal Reserve Economic Data, and actually I want to replicate one figure that you saw um, in your class in one of your slides. This figure, and by replicating this figure, I'm going to talk about this FRED data set as well. So let's begin. So if you search FRED or Federal Reserve Economic Data, the first website that pops up is this, and just click on that. So you can see that it has a user-friendly website, and it is very straightforward to use. So if you search for any data, for example, real GDP, you can find that easily. So here you can see the real GDP data from 1947 to 2025. And so when you see the graph and you zoom out from the graph, you will see that it has an upward slope and it is growing most of the time. But as you zoom in, you will notice that in some periods it has a downward slope and it is decreasing sometimes. So when the society faces these downward slopes, it is actually a recession, and you can see that with these gray areas. So in these gray areas, you can see that these are the periods for recession. And for example, one of them that you remember is during COVID-19, that the society faced um, this recession. Okay. Um, So let me just show you another thing as well. Let's compare real GDP with nominal GDP. Just add a line. So the blue line is still the real GDP data, and the green dotted line is the nominal GDP. And at 2017, they are equal, and this is because the benchmark year is 2017, and 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 you can see that after that the nominal GDP is higher than real GDP, and this is actually because of the inflation, and um, and as year increases, the differences between nominal GDP and real GDP increases. So actually, the GDP deflator is increasing. Um, so yeah, let's make one or two lines of this figure. So let me talk about this figure as well. So in this figure, you can see the share of the different components of GDP. For example, this blue line shows the share of the consumption uh, over the GDP, real GDP. So it is around almost like 70%. You can say that around 70% of the real GDP is for consumption. And for example, this green line is the government expenditures, and it is around 20%. So you can say that around 20% of the real GDP is because of the government expenditure. So one thing that you should notice here is that this light blue line is actually the share of the import, and we have the negative sign for that because in the GDP formula, the import component has a negative sign. So this is why we are showing that with these negative numbers here. So now let's make some of these figures, some of these lines. Okay, let me just delete the nominal GDP because we don't need that for this graph. So we already have this real GDP here. Let's add the real consumption as well. The quarterly ones. Quarterly, yes. And add that line. So right now we are making the first line. And for the first line, we have these two variables, real GDP and real consumption. So real GDP is A and real consumption is B. And to make the first line, we need actually B over A times 100. Okay, so now we made the first line in the graph. Let's compare that with these. Okay. So you can see that it actually fluctuates over time. Sometimes it is higher, sometimes it is lower. One interesting thing that I want you to focus on is that during recessions, we usually see an upward slope for the share of the consumption. And this is because during recessions, people tend to sacrifice less important things in their basket. For example, so they tend to actually, for example, do less of investment and consume more. So this is why we see an increasing share of consumption during recessions. So during recessions, people tend to sacrifice other components like investment in order to keep their consumption at the same level. So that's why we see an upward slope during recessions. Okay, let's make another line as well. So for the second line, let's have the government expenditures, um, the real expenditures, real government expenditures, yes. So we have the real government consumption and expenditures, and we need real GDP as well. So the government expenditure is A, the real GDP is B, and what we need is A over B times 100. Okay. And this dotted line is the government share. Let's see. Yeah. So you can see that this variable has also its own fluctuations, and now it is around let me see, yeah, around 17%. Around 17% of the GDP is due to the government expenditures. Um, yeah, so let's make one last line as well. Let's make the import line real imports 2017. Yeah, this is what we need. Another data that we need for to make this light blue color, this light blue color line is the real GDP. Okay, so real imports is A, real GDP is B. So here we need A over B times 100. However, I told you that you should multiply that by a negative sign. So we have a negative sign. We will have a negative sign here as well. And yeah, we could make this figure as well. Um, let's have the exports as well. Just to explain something. Yeah, we need real exports, real GDP as well, and A over B times 100. Okay, good. So now I think you kind of like learned how to replicate the figure from your slides. Um, Also, another thing that I wanted to show you is that so you can see that actually imports has a higher share when you compare it to exports. So, for example, here it is around 16% of the GDP uh, for imports and around 11% of the GDP for exports. So, um, when we have higher imports than exports, it is called trade deficit, and uh, when we have more exports than imports, it is called trade surplus. Yeah, so this was a short video on introducing the Fred data source and how to work with that. Um, I hope that you enjoyed this video and you learned something. So just please email me if you have any questions. Um, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the semester as well.